Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Good afternoon. I'm back with another great episode. We got a cool guest today that I was just talking with a little bit before we started. We have Maartje here. I'm not going to say your last name because you said there's no need, so we're just going with Maartje. Maartje is you're the ER doctor for businesses. You got a company called the Chaos Games Consulting. Is it the Chaos Games Consulting or the Chaos Games Consulting Company? What's the name of the business? I want to make sure I get that right.
The Chaos Games Consulting.
Chaos Games Consulting, and you've got a podcast called the Business Emergency Room Podcast. What you were telling me that you really do is triage for businesses.
That's right.
Which is amazing. Because chaos is pretty prevalent in any business at any point in time. It always happens. So let's start with the name of the business, the Chaos Games Consulting. What inspired that to be the name of your business? What does chaos mean to you in a leadership context?
Yeah. So I've always, when you work, come out of the corporate world, and people always talk about what's your if you work for yourself, it's the same thing, right? What's your superpower? What's your niche? And I think structuring chaos has been where I sat always. I worked in frontier projects. I was forced as a graduate to operate in career ladders and forever wanted to look across the ladders and across the silos. I'm one of these people who sees connections between things, not in the lanes.
Right.
And I think that's a certain type of people. So that's where innate I operate. I love chaos, actually. I love adventure. I love unpredictable. I'm a sailor. I'm a skipper. I've always worked also in the disaster response type of space. I learned that I do well when the emotions run high and when everybody's looking at each other, what now what? I also have a background in innovation management, and so chaos can be a good thing, right? Chaos is opportunity and innovation and energy, but most of us associate chaos with overload, overwhelm, treading water, spending 120 hours a week and making no progress. Not for lack of effort, capability, or trying, just too much all at once and not enough guided direction. And so I'm an engineer, chaos theory. I think it fits, right? And to me, business is a game, ultimately, right? It's about winning the value game. So that's where the name comes from.
Love it. Love it. So most leaders hate the idea of chaos. They fear it in some ways, but you see it as an opportunity, right? So what's the first mindset shift that people need to make when things start to fall apart, when things start to get chaotic?
To me, it's really about that redirection of energy. When things start to fall apart, people hesitate to ask for help. It feels like failure. People associate these things with failure, blame game. To me, we need to adopt the mindset that if you are in the bad kind of chaos, what you need is a redirection of energy. And you might need temporarily a power bank, right? So you might need some fresh energy to tie you over because you're not recharging effectively. You might need some fresh ears and eyes for a different perspective to get you there. But if we can redirect all this energy you're already expanding more effectively, you can be on the right side of chaos, which is where you make leaps and you scale and you grow. You close the gap to potential.
Love it. So when someone brings you in, do people bring you in for these to kind of help out with these chaotic situations? Is that how it works?
Yeah, and usually a day later than they wanted, right? They don't need me until they need me yesterday.
So when you enter a client situation that's in full-blown chaos, full-blown crisis, what's the very first thing that you're trying to assess before you start fixing anything?
Typically it's difficult conversations because it's always people, right? And so when unfortunately, by the time I come in, things have built up, right? So frustration is rampant. Everybody is tired and done and has been trying, right? Has been trying to right this ship in various ways. And so I typically get brought in by either the board or an investor or sometimes the C-suite themselves. And so my first question is everybody around who's going to be around the table still really really here? Or is there already somebody where, regardless of whether they are really to blame or really were wrong, is there actually somebody where the rest of the team has already given up on? And should we part ways before we rebuild? Because there is, to me, nothing worse than trying to particularly that it's particularly prevalent when it's the investors or something bringing you in, and you're like, oh, I will give the owner or the CEO one more chance. And I'm like, are you really willing to give them another chance? Or is it already done? And should we first make that transition to an advisory role, or for them, or kind of declare that that's the intent also as a transition, right? That we want them involved, but in that role, it's no longer working. So part of the conversation we're going to have is what that looks like. Because trying to have, or trying to have some people around the table who really no longer trust each other and can work together, and then having open and honest conversations, those two don't go together, and we'll just time.
I 100%. And I imagine that it's super helpful to have you as a third party to kind of start, because you're right, those are hard conversations to have. So if you have an impartial person coming in as a third party to say, hey, let's take a good hard look at this. Like, speaking in sailor terms, do you have the right crew? Do we have the right crew to sail this boat? Because if they're not, they need to go. We need to get the right people in here. I guess that's kind of a way of looking at it.
Or let's admit that also this journey out or to the next safe haven is still going to be a bit. And if you really already can't stand to be on board with each other, then this might be the step off point, right?
Yep, for sure. So you're working with leaders in pretty intense situations. What do you see that separates the people who crumble from those who rise during a chaotic moment or situation?
Say the fact that they bring me in is typically a win, right? Because somebody somewhere dared to admit that trying to keep going the way you are is not functional. And I see that in the organization, right? It's definitely picked up as a positive sign. And it seems to almost create a temporary relief that sometimes is only a few days, right? Because people can get impatient in how soon they see something. But the fact that there's open admission that something needs to change, and that whatever you were trying to do yourself is not enough, to me, that is a big step. I also feel that in those situations, some of your personal capabilities and whatever else happened in your life to you, and how many scars you've had, and how many weird situations you've been in, also plays a role. But people surprise themselves sometimes, right? There's this expression, which I'm not sure I'm translating entirely correct in English, but something about one eye being king in the land of the blind, right?
The one-eyed king in the land of the blind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you're in those situations and you look around, and as a leader, you realize that nobody knows, or even if you're not on paper in that situation, the leader, but you see that everybody is like, is it me? And you're then willing to say, well, I also don't know, but I guess it's me who takes the first step. It's about having that courage to take a step, get to a different perspective.
I guess to realize that there's a problem, right? I guess is really what they're looking at. Have you ever had a situation where you someone calls you in and you come in and you're like, this isn't salvageable. You've passed the point of no return.
Yeah, and that's why I called my podcast The Business Emergency Room. But even then, there is a situation to come out of, right? Because that's first is like, where are we with the people dynamics and who's on board? But then immediately the other question is, how do we stabilize? What needs to happen today for you to be in business tomorrow, right? Is that we need to close the gap to payroll, which is 6 days from now, or it's worse than that, whatever it is. That needs to happen before we do anything else, because there's no sense trying to sit around a table and come up with other stuff if you're not in business. Right. And yes, there's situations where it's very apparent, or becomes quick enough apparent, that maybe that is the end of the line. And so, and whether that then but then it's like, okay, how do we land this ship on the shore for its final resting place, right? In a manner that works best for most. And that's still a value conversation, right? It's mitigating losses, it's being respectful to the people you have, it's maybe transferring and or through starts or partial sales, there is still many scenarios there too that allow people to leave much better than if it's pull the plug, close the doors, and everybody shows up for work tomorrow to nothing.
Right. So in these situations, fear and ego and uncertainty and anger, a lot of that stuff can come out and kind of explode during a crisis, during chaos. So what are some of the strategies that you're coaching leaders and business owners to use to regulate the emotion in the room and to keep the teams calm while that chaos, while you're in a kind of a chaotic phase? What are we doing to keep the waters calm and keep everybody kind of chilled out?
Yeah. So my rule as a skipper always was everybody's allowed to try steering, to do whatever else you want to do on the sailboat. But the point that I start screaming at you, you first do what I tell you to do. And then once we reach calmer waters, we can have a whole debate club about why you thought that was a dumb decision, right? In the crisis, we need one voice. So sometimes that's the communication, right? Okay, until we get to this shore, which is maybe a few days or 2 weeks, we're going to work on an order-based system, but in parallel, we're going to do diagnosis and talk to everybody. At a personal level, I typically work with some of the key people about their own personal stress levels and situation. I can't do that with a whole organization, but I do. By bringing in an external party, you do create a space for people to vent. And there is a certain healthy level of venting in order to get to the rest of it. I also really extremely steer away from trying to get to any blame gaming or analysis, right? It's a stake in the sand saying, listen, we're now here, right? We're shipwrecked or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Our objective is to get out.
Right. Less focus on how we got here, more focus on how we get out of the situation.
Yeah, that's first. And if you actually manage to redirect that energy, then at some point you need to deal with some of the pain or some of the awful things that got said in the heat of the moment. But assuming that when you started, people in your organization didn't have dysfunctional relationships and largely got along and respected and appreciated each other, my experience is that can come back. If you already had dysfunctional and it escalated to, it might not come back. But in principle, people start to see slowly, and when they calm down, if you're still in the moment, it's hard to see that other people also did it with all the best intent. Right. If you make some progress and collaborated again and had some successes, then that perception comes back, huh?
Gotcha.
So it's about the doing and redirecting energy.
I love the idea of getting rid of the blame game. Like it doesn't, you're not helping anybody at that point. You're just to me, that's just creating more chaos. When you're doing that, well, he did this and that's why it doesn't matter. We're here regardless. Let's fix the problem. So love that. Do you have any stories that you can share with me of any businesses you've gone into and the kind of chaos that you don't have to name names, obviously, but the kind of a story of a business you went into, the type of chaos they were in, and then, what you did to kind of help right the ship?
Yeah, I think somewhat at the simpler end of the spectrum of the stuff I do, but relevant for this audience is a business that had planned an exit, right? And thought that had it all lined up. It was a relative rushed exit, right? So it was a business owner who wanted out, and stuff in their health and personal life changed, and it was like, and they had it all lined up, and the sale fell through, and they'd already lost some people in the process who were like, I don't know if I want to go. So the business was already no longer the business, right? Let's assume that before they started this sales process, they were in good shape because of the unrest of that process, and the thing that drove the exit. They were in a much messier situation. And then I came in and it was like, okay, so what now? And they still wanted out, right? So on the one hand, the business needed a bit of stabilizing because what they tried to sell and how the business was performing now had slid. But also there was a reason the sale fell through, right? And there was a raft of reasons, but one of the big things, which is very typical with business owners who've run their own business for a long time and haven't had an outside perspective in, right, was that they had this quite substantial client who was one of their first clients, right? So they carried them through. They were doing all sorts of special things for this client. And in their head, that was part and parcel of the business. So the deal that had fallen apart was kind of like, you buy my business as is with everything in it. And the buying party was like, yeah, but that piece of the business has no value to me. So if you make me take it, I'm going to pay you less because I have to figure out how to get rid of them. So they'd made a bid saying we want that business minus this part, which was higher than the whole business. And so that discrepancy just didn't compute with the owner. And there was a lot of emotions involved, right? Which is not surprising. And so what we actually did is that we fixed a bunch of stuff in the business that made it worth stuff they were already doing that just needed formalizing so that somebody else could see the value of that and actually measure it rather than believe the owner on their word. But what the biggest thing we did is that we actually worked with that client, that customer they had, and transferred them somewhere else so that the owner felt good about that they didn't leave them.
Sure.
And then suddenly there was plenty of buyers who wanted the rest of the business.
That sounds like a crazy client. It's what that sounds like. Is that there was?
That's how we sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace or our house too, right? We're like, how do you mean the buyer wants to buy the house only if I repaint the best room in my house? What do you mean they don't like that color, right? We're emotionally attached to it. We think everybody else loves it too.
Yeah, but it's not going to be your house anymore. It's going to be their house. So you need to give it to them the way that they want it if they're going to buy it. So that makes perfect sense. So what can leaders take what they learn from a chaos situation or a crisis, and how can they bake that resilience into their company culture long term to keep the chaos from happening again?
I think everybody needs chaos navigation skills in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, right? The world's not going to stop spinning around its axis or go any slower. So I think everybody needs it. Unfortunately, we always seem to learn these skills in the hardest moments. But for me, a big chunk of that is around decision-making and actually having decision-making hygiene for the bigger, because decision-making facilitates alignment, facilitates prioritization, facilitates what we do and what we don't do. Good decision making means that if you make a leap, that you've done enough work that you can do it. Good decision making means that you're also doing good due diligence, and not just from a merger and acquisition perspective, but due diligence on, if I'm going into this market segment, do I actually know that market is there? Did I do enough work before I put stuff out there that they can sustain my price or whatever it is that they need there, right? So for me, there's a skill there that makes you nimble and agile. And to me, it all hangs off the coat rack of decision making. And with decision making, if you dare to take a step, you get progressive insight, right? Decision making is also about de-risking. And so often we just sit because it's too big, too scary. Whilst if we would be willing to take one or two steps, we can still make that decision. We haven't committed our lives to something else,
right?
But we learn more, right? So it's about the willingness to take smaller bites of an apple, see what you learn. I totally believe there's 100 roads that lead to Rome, and that we can make many of them work. And that if you start down the one, and you need a bit of course correction, that's still way more speed than not making a decision and waiting for the answer to fall out of the sky. And simply, if you have more scars, or if you've seen or heard more about scars from other people, you have more imagination on what you might be able to do, right?
So you just mentioned something that is kind of related to the question I was going to ask you, where if you're seeing other scars that other people have had, you can kind of use that to your advantage. I wanted to know, what are Are there warning signs for a business owner to let them know, like, oh, we're veering toward chaos? I see the storm in the horizon on my boat. We need to go a different direction. Are there some warning signs that the business owners can kind of account for and say, okay, let's go ahead and course correct before the chaos hits, because we're heading towards it?
Yeah, so to me, chaos stems from misalignment and unclarity, right? So there is wheels spinning, but they're not spinning in the same direction, or it's like plaque buildup in the artery. It's slow and little bits and pieces. But a lot of the symptoms are around what you see from your people, right? You see increased frustration levels. You see slipping deliverables. You see people trying to slope your shoulder work off on other people. You see people coming back regurgitating decisions or direction. You see stagnant numbers or numbers that at the high level are good, and as soon as you dig one level down, there's inconsistency. The stories don't add up. You get long and waffled answers. You no longer get people knocking on your door with proactive feedback. They're starting to hold back and wait and see. Yeah, it's unhealthy relationships and dynamics in your, and I think we feel them.
Yeah.
The challenge is, if we're all working too hard, we get more focused on us and what we need to do. And as leaders, we typically tend to even work even harder, which makes it potentially harder to see and hear what's happening with our team.
Right.
And so these things are at odds a little.
Okay. So those are the things we need to be looking out for. Love that. So shifting gears, Maartje, tell me a little bit about the podcast, about the Business Emergency Room, and how that got started, and tell me a little bit about what the show's like.
Yeah, I would love to say it was a brilliant business idea, but I always wanted to be a radio DJ. So that had definitely something to do with it, which is maybe not the best value proposition.
That's okay.
But
we got to have our passion.
Radio DJ is dead. So this is the next.
No, but podcasting is not. So.
No, but it comes back to what we just talked about, right? I definitely believe if you've seen a lot of weird stuff, you're better at weird and unexpected stuff. The next best thing is learning from others. I do believe we can learn from others. And we can learn from others if we hear stories that resonate with us, that are memorable, or that come to us at the right time, right? Sometimes it's also a timing thing. It's maybe the 10th time you've been taught about a certain learning leadership principle that's actually pretty straightforward, but you forgot about the first 9 times that you heard it because it wasn't as relevant in the moment. And suddenly the 10th time you hear it, you're like, yeah, exactly. I forgot about that, but that's what I need today. So the podcast is about giving that, right? It's, to me, it's supposed to be value for money. It's about tools and tactics in turmoil to look at your business through maybe fresh pair of goggles, a fresh filter, some very practical discipline or subject matter specific tips or tricks. And we talk a lot about symptoms, right? What is kind of a healthy, because I do think a business is like a body, right? If we eat a pack of cookies once a week, we're probably okay. It's not great. But if it's a daily or 2 daily occurrence, we're suddenly in a different realm, right? So we talk a lot about, give me a feel for where the symptoms are unhealthy and where you're like, okay, that's a normal affliction every business has. At the same time, if you have too many of these afflictions and you all have them a little bit, that's also buildup, right? That's still equally, but that's, and so it's also about showcasing a referral network, right? That if you tap into somebody like me, as I say, I do triage. I'm not a specialist, so I will refer you out. If we establish that one of the main big levers to get your business back on track is X, Y, or Z, I help you find
the right
person
people
who is for you the right person to help you with X, Y, or Z.
Very cool.
And so these are my guests that come on the podcast.
So you have, is it weekly? You do it every week?
Yeah, weekly. Sometimes it's just me. Other times you get guests who are specialists, but you get also guests who've got the scars and come to talk about their scars, or who do what I do for different kind of industries, and we talk about what you can learn from that.
Nice. How long have you been doing the pod?
A year and a half or so. I just recorded the 75th episode. So
That's great. That's
Nice, right?
that's one of those magic numbers with a podcast to kind of get it established and get your audience built up. Is most people don't get to episode 10.
I
So
know,
the fact that you
yeah.
made it to 75, kudos to
Yeah,
you.
I'm
That's
a good
amazing.
podcaster by virtue that I'm still standing.
Heck yeah, I mean
I
that's
wish in business it was that easy, right?
right. Well, I mean, I think there's something to be said for businesses doing that too, where if you persevere and you keep going and you keep showing up every day, you're going to figure things out and you're going to get better at what you're doing. And the same thing applies to podcasting. So kudos to you for keeping your podcast going. That's awesome. Most people that we work with, not most people that we work with, but a lot of people that we talk to who said, yeah, I had a podcast for a while. I did it for a couple of months and I stopped. And we're like, well, why did you stop? You have to keep going. So kudos.
But it's also feedback, right? And it's also the loop of that it seems to be delivering something to the audience. And
yep.
I have good guests. I have fun making it. I think
cool.
It seems to work, right?
That's great. Yeah. Maartje, thank you so much for coming on the pod today and talking to me about chaos and what we can do to keep it, to right the ship when the chaos hits our business. I really enjoyed this conversation and getting to talk to you. Let people out there know how they can get in touch with you, how they can find the podcast. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I'm not always this pink for people who see this. My AC zonked out, so I'm a little warm here. I'm in New Orleans. So Maartje, Maartje, on LinkedIn, or Maartje and Chaos, and you'll find me. My business website is thechaosgamesconsulting.com. The podcast is everywhere you listen to podcasts. The Business Emergency Room. That should be doing the trick.
There you go. Everybody check out Maartje's podcast. And if I know we have a lot of business owners who watch and listen to the podcast. If you see the chaos coming, if the chaos is there, this is who you need to call. You need to contact Maartje and
if you want to prevent it, I'm also here.
Yeah, you don't have to wait until the chaos is there.
To avoid some of the pain that I see my clients go through, right?
Right on. I get it. Well, thank you so much for coming on this afternoon and talking with me. Those of you who are watching the live stream out there, we really appreciate you guys tuning in as well. You're a big part of why we do this. And if you're watching the recorded version after the fact on YouTube or listening on Apple or listening on Spotify, we appreciate you guys as well. And we love thumbs and likes and stars and all that good stuff, all those things. And following the page, all those things really help to get the show out to more people and let people like Maartje here, let people spread the word on what they're doing and how they're helping people out. So we appreciate you guys very, very much. We'll be back tomorrow with more episodes of Partnership for Profit. Maartje, thank you again so much for giving me some time. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, have a great night, and we'll see you for more P4P real soon.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.